This is the Freeheel Life Podcast, episode number 90. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Freeheel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And welcome back, everybody. And can you believe we've done 90 episodes of this thing? It's just burning by. I'm really glad I kept it rolling through the summer. I've been having a blast talking to people and keeping the Telemark stoke alive, if you will. It's always nice to connect with people during the summer, even in the off months. And there's plenty of fun stuff to talk about. Hopefully you've all enjoyed it during the warmer months. And now we're kind of starting to arc over into the end of summer and getting into fall. People are going back to school. I can definitely start feeling it in my bones and excited for the upcoming winter, upcoming fall. I especially love the fall time. I'm sure most of you do. And it's just that transition time. Salt Lake's good too because you get kind of those four seasons and you can actually feel it coming, if you will. So on the business side of the house today, I've got mostly just some news from telemarkskier.com. We've been pumping out some content on there. We did the latest Sips and Tips, which is a new thing we've been trying where we're doing a live Zoom call. And for subscribers, we send that out ahead of time so you can actually participate in the conversation. And then we record it, and the recording is now up on telemarkskier.com. Sips and Tips number 2, we talked about Telemark boot modifications and kind of this ever-growing trend of boot mods that has not only been something as of late that we're starting to see a lot of with people trying to primarily make lighter touring boots on their own, but also we talked about downhill modifications and also just the history of modifications in general, as Telemark skiers have traditionally always had some sort of mod program aftermarket sort of thing going on. So we talked about that. It's about an hour-long conversation. I had Craig Dostey, myself, Taylor Johnson, and our used gear specialist at Freeheel Life, Nate Nordell, and they brought in some of their boots that they've modified themselves. We looked at some other stuff online and kind of discussed that. It was a really fun conversation. We're having a fun time doing these and kind of learning the ropes of that live video stuff and hoping to do quite a bit more. So hopefully you'll check that out. As far as gear stuff, there's also an updated Rotofella Freeride review. This is the binding that kicked off the NTN sort of revolution in Telemark many, many years ago. But as we are preparing for an upcoming gear guide on telemarkskier.com that people can utilize, we are back cataloging some stuff, touching it up. A lot of these bindings are still in use. They're sold, they're manufactured, and we're just trying to make sure that we've got the most dialed in content for people to find online. So if you're shaking your head and you're like, why would you even do that? That's the purpose, is so we can archive this content. And I always say you'd be very, very surprised at some of the bindings that people still buy because they like them and they exist for a reason. So we're just doing what we can to make sure it's all there for you. And if you haven't become a subscriber over at telemarkskier.com, please do, because that's what we're hoping is we can help build this family up so that we can have more and more of you on there reading awesome Telemark content, and especially as we head into the upcoming winter. So today, my guest has been a fitness trainer and coach for 20 years. She earned a Bachelor of Science Degree in exercise science and began working as a trainer in commercial gym settings before opening her own facility in the suburbs of Chicago. She later moved her entire practice online and now helps folks around the world to become unbreakable. When she's not busy coaching, she enjoys adventuring outdoors in her home state of Utah. Her online writing and coaching programs can be found at her sites, The Unbreakable Body and Fit for Real Life. And yes, she tele skis. I'm super excited for this conversation. She's my better half. We live together, and I see her all the time. But this is a person that I greatly admire for her expertise in her field, and I'm really excited to have her on the show. So please welcome Kate Galliette. All right, Kate, welcome to the podcast. How's it going?
Hi, it's nice to see you.
Yeah, this is fun. This is we've talked about doing this for a long time, and I'm excited that we're actually making it happen. This is like the long planning that finally I feel like you're the perfect guest because everyone's always asking us for actual information on health and fitness, and since
how convenient that you are partnered up with someone who is an expert in health and fitness.
Seen as oftentimes, I'm sure we'll get into this, that I'm not utilizing my resources to the extent that I probably should. So, no, but this is really cool. I'm excited to talk a bunch about this and kind of dig into what you do. And I think it's a cool story because kind of your, I want to talk a little bit about your introduction to telemark skiing, because I think that's, you kind of got roped into it. But tell the people a little bit about you, like where you're from. I obviously know where you're from and whatnot, but give people some of your background about where you grew up and maybe the fact that you didn't grow up around skiing.
That is true. I grew up in the far northwest suburbs of Chicago in a little town called Huntley. We didn't even live in the town. And it's farm life, relaxed life, great big yards, all that kind of good running around, climbing trees stuff that I did as a kid. And I definitely did all of the sports as a kid, and I'm, into athletics and all of that. But I had built a whole life in Illinois where there are not mountains or anything of that sort. And we did have an 8th grade ski trip to Wilmot, I think. Maybe.
Is that where you went?
I think so. I can't remember. And that was pretty much the only winter sport that was an actual sport that I ever tried. The rest of my winter sports were like sledding, and that was about it. So while I was quite athletic and still am, when I moved to Utah, I stumbled across this guy who does this crazy form of skiing. And I'm sure we'll get into more of the details, but I ended up trying to rope you into collaborating and sharing some ideas. And then here we are now, and we're sharing ideas, and I'm learning how to telemark ski. But I had never skied until I was, 6 years into living in Utah. Even once I got here, because it just seemed so expensive compared to the other sports that I could get into, like climbing and hiking and camping and backpacking and things like that. Skiing seemed really out of reach when I first got here, and I didn't know how to do it. So I thought, well, why would I start something like that and drop all that money? And then right about the time that I was like, but I want to go further. I hiked a lot in the winter with snowshoeing and things like that. And I was like, but I want to go and more. Like I would snowshoe in to these places where I knew people skied, backcountry skied. And they'd always be like, you snowshoed here? Like, ugh.
I remember you told me that
and
too.
I was like, well, it's pretty. It's nice. And they're like, yeah, but we get to ski out in like 10 minutes. And I was like, that's a good point. And that was about that point when I was like, maybe I should look into getting into skiing more seriously and learn what to do. And I met you. And then I was like, what's this form of skiing? This is wild. And things that are strange and challenging always interest me, at least for a period of time. And thankfully, I liked it enough to be like, oh, this is a good challenge. I want to stick with this. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't have stuck with it. But it's a weird and awesome challenge. And so now we're a couple years into skiing. But anyways, that's where I came from in the Midwest, where like I didn't have exposure to any of this stuff.
Yeah, I think and having gone back to where you're from, it's the terrain. I mean, yeah, Wilmot and southern Wisconsin's probably the closest thing. And we've talked about that on the podcast, but it's not, it's a small hill, it's nothing.
I would probably like chuckle if I went back today. Not, God love it. I mean, thank goodness that places like that exist, but I would probably chuckle because when I remember being in 8th grade and being like, it's so steep and scary. And I mean, you don't know what you're doing if you've never learned to ski. So of course it seems steep and scary, but compared to terrain I see regularly now living in Utah, I probably would be like, oh wow, I can't believe I was like nervous about that.
Yeah. What brought you out? Well, I guess I'm trying to think. So tell the people a little bit about your background, because in Chicago, I mean, like you said, you grew up doing normal sports, you know, softball, volleyball,
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. You weren't really exposed to skiing or hiking or sort of like what we would think about like in the Rocky Mountain sense of the word. But your background's more in fitness. Like you went to school and worked as a trainer, owned a gym.
Yeah. So I got my Bachelor of Science Degree in exercise science because I knew I want to help people. And I thought, like, when you're a kid, you don't know what that means yet. You're just like, oh, a doctor or something. But then I realized I was not interested in becoming smart enough to pass the levels of chemistry that were required for that. So then I was like, well, what else? What's another way to help people? And I found out about physical therapy, and I was like, whoa, that's cool. You can help people after accidents and injuries. That seems pretty cool. And then while I was going to get my BS degree, one of the summer internships you had to do was in the field you thought you wanted to go into. And thank God they had us do that unpaid too. So I was like working for free the entire summer. But it was great because while I liked the physical therapy clinic I picked, it was immediately apparent that is not where I wanted to spend my time. And in order to expand my horizons, I also requested to be an intern at this gym that had opened up, Lifetime Fitness. And it was kind of a different kind of gym. It had more stuff, more focus on training and lifelong care of your body and things like that. And so I interned at both of those places at the same time over the summer. And that was really cool because it was instantly apparent how much more I enjoyed being in a gym setting, mainly because it's really cool to help someone after an accident or an injury or someone who's elderly. That's all amazing. But in a gym, you get to help people before they get injured. You could even help them maybe get injured less frequently. And you get to help people who want to keep improving. And that's probably true also of people who are in accidents, but it's not their focus at that point. They're like, I'm just trying to get better. I'm just trying to heal from this. And in the gym, you get people who are like, maybe they did already heal from something. And they're like, now I want to achieve this or that or the other thing. So it just felt more dynamic and more on the end of the scale that I wanted to work on. And now I get to work with physical therapists who are like, okay, cool. This person's, they're already healed and they're back to normal. And now they're going to go on to train to something more impactful in terms of sports or fitness or an adventure they want to go on. And so then they would come and work with me. So I worked in Lifetime for a long time and, really enjoyed a lot of aspects of learning and coaching and becoming learning how to manage people and help people. It was really awesome. But the time came to leave and start my own gym. And so I started a gym with a co-owner who I eventually bought out and took over the ownership of it. And so I ran this gym. Before gyms were cool, it was still like CrossFit era, like where it was like a garage style gym and everything.
Like what year was this again?
That's a good question. I can't remember, like 2011, maybe 2010, something like that. So it wasn't as fancy pants as all the gyms are now, but I was thankful for that because we were able to get started and people liked the idea of like a warehouse setting that wasn't really fancy or anything like that. And so I ran that gym for a few years and really continued to hone my craft and also continued to work with such an interesting array of people that I learned a lot about how to structure training so that they could actually be as empowered to know how to train their body as I knew how to train their body. And that was a really important part of that experience for me, was learning that I could actually help someone help themselves beyond just them needing me to write their fitness program or something like that. And that was going really well and it was fun and I loved my clients and everybody was cool and it was going great. But something around 2014 made me start thinking like, man, something's not okay. Everything's okay. My house is great. My salary's great. My friends and clients are great. Everything's great, except not. And it was around that time that I had actually taken my methods and turned them into an online program so that I could connect with people all over the world with that stuff. And that had done really well. And that gave me the chance to start thinking about how maybe I'm not tethered to a certain location to do my job. Maybe I could do my job anywhere, in which case, why am I here? Because there's not much here for me. And again, I love the people I worked with, but there wasn't much there for me beyond that. And I wasn't a mountain person yet. I wasn't outdoorsy per se. I was, I would go walk in the park, but I wouldn't go, hiking or backpacking or something like that. But something in me was like, I gotta do something. And so I remember sitting on the phone one night thinking, well, where would I go? What would I do? And talking to a friend about it. And they were like, why don't you come check out Utah? And I was like, okay. I had like nothing that was like drawing me there other than I knew a few people who lived in Salt Lake City. And they seemed like they had a fun time because I'd see their Facebook pictures after the weekend and I'd be like, whoa, you went to cool places. And so I came to check it out. And it took 5 days of being in Salt Lake City to go, oh, I need to move here immediately. And so that was a quick 6 months then to close my gym, which was sad, but take the rest of my programming online. And I made that my full-time job then. Instead of being a gym owner plus selling some programs online, I now do everything online. I coach one-on-one clients online. I sell programs people can do on their own via online, videos and programming and things like that. And that enabled me to be able to be here in Utah. And that then led to like, I'll go hiking, and then I'll lead to snowshoeing, and then here's this telemark skiing. This is interesting. And so it's been interesting to kind of blend more of my work into what I do for fun and trying to learn to telemark ski.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting just even hearing you tell that story again, because I've been to where your gym was, I've seen it, and, it's just different part of the country. I mean, the things that you're doing, on the side too, let alone for work. But like you said, being outdoors might be like walking in the park, or, you're not like going and hiking in the mountains and doing all this other stuff. So that's cool that you ended up out here. And I think about, and I want to talk about the online programming and kind of all the stuff you did. Funny enough, we actually met kind of on a podcast.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which is kind of funny that now we're doing a podcast about it, but it's a defunct one. But you were a guest, I was a guest, and that's kind of how we got on each other's radar. So when you broke off from doing your gym in person, had you already started kind of creating the Unbreakable Body program in the gym, or? You'll actually see the gym in some of the promotional videos that we had done. They're somewhere on the interwebs now. I don't know where, but I had launched that program the summer of 2014. So the gym was still thriving and doing great, and it didn't even cross my mind to not have the gym anymore until I was like, whoa, I actually could help people in another. And now don't take this to mean that it's like easy to make money online. It's not. You have to like rebuild the whole system online. You have to rebuild a business online. It's essentially taking a brick and mortar business and building it with virtual bricks on the internet. It's not easy. But doing that did something to my brain to go, well, okay, am I really as happy as I could be here? Am I really feeling as fulfilled as I could be? And it still blows my mind to this day that I didn't know how fulfilling life could be until I got here. But I remember saying, I don't care if I don't make one friend or never meet one cool dude to date, or my business blows up and I go bankrupt and have to get a job. I got to do this. Something inside me is, I've got to do this. And it's been a rough and tumble couple of years to get settled in, but gosh, I'm like almost 8 years into like being here now, I think. And it has never felt more right to be in Utah than it never felt this right in Illinois ever. Yeah, no, that's amazing. So I guess I kind of forgot about that you had actually started doing some of the using your gym as sort of like where you're shooting these videos for the program and stuff. And so let's talk about this. I want people to know, because I mean, we live together. I get to see all of this firsthand. I don't always do all the stuff I should. So just disclaimer out there that I'm not the best student all the time. But I think it's really important. What I want you to explain the unbreakable body concept and how it breaks the body down, how you utilize it. Because I want to obviously talk about how to use this with telemark skiing. But give people the breakdown of it. Like what is the unbreakable body and the basic of the program? Obviously, you could go on probably pretty deep into each thing, but give us the overview of the whole thing.
Sure. Well, when I was coaching in person, there are general principles of strength and conditioning that every good coach learns and learns to work with to help someone achieve their goals, whatever they might be. But I really wanted, especially I was working with a lot of endurance athletes at that point, and I wanted them to know what to do, because too often I was seeing folks who would go along and then get hurt or overtrain or something would happen, and then they would get thrown off their training, and then that throws off their race plans, and then that throws off their happiness and their life and everything that they're doing, and it costs a lot of money to get treated for your injury and all that. And I was like, I really want these folks to be able to catch this stuff sooner, so that they're more aware before things get to a point where now they're injured, fully injured. I also want them to be able to feel empowered to do this on their own. I always joke that my objective has always been to make my job unnecessary for these folks, which is not a good business strategy, but people seem to like it and they keep coming back. But I think that's important though, because if someone doesn't have the autonomy to know that they know what's right for them and to do it, and that might even mean going, I know what's right for me, but I need someone who's an expert in this field to help me. If someone doesn't have that, then I don't think the fitness program is a good program. I don't want someone to be dependent on someone else. We should only be dependent on ourselves for that sort of stuff. And you can bring in experts to help you, but you should be the one who's in charge of that. So I was thinking of all these things and thinking about how to structure programming for them and to help folks like that who do want to understand how to take care of their body. And I developed this framework called the 6 pillars of an unbreakable body. And we'll get to what unbreakable is in just a second. But first, people have to know a really simple principle about bodies, and that your body is always responding to the signals it receives. I call it the signal response principle, and it's always responding. It will never not respond. And so when your body's giving you responses like aches and pains, or your knees start hurting on the 6th run of the day, or you're an endurance athlete and your back starts to hurt at about mile 50 on your bike, none of that's bad. That's all really helpful information. And we can use those responses to reverse engineer why that might have happened, which then allows you to take action to send different signals. If you can figure out it might have been this signal, my back isn't as strong as it needs to be, or my technique on the bike isn't as clean as it should be, or I haven't done a lot of training to build up the function and capacity of my knee and hip joints. Maybe that's why I'm having this knee pain. You then can say, okay, if poor bike mechanics or weak lower back muscles or not doing as much care as you could do for your lower body, if that's the signal that's contributing in some way to you feeling aches and pains or problems that you don't really want to feel, then you can send different signals to try to offset that and change that. And so if you know that, then that means all you have to do is learn to start paying attention to your body and listening to the responses it gives you, and then being willing to be an explorer, which we can get into the explorer's mindset sometime if you want to do that, but be an explorer of those responses and learn how to understand what they might mean. Because if you can do that, you can navigate the journey the entire time and really never get too far thrown off course, even if you get in a bad car accident, God forbid, or some tragedy you could have never foreseen happens. You can still say, okay, how am I responding? How's my body responding? What can I do to support my body so it can respond in a more favorable way? So that's where this whole thing begins, is understanding that the signal response principle is always happening. But that's not enough to go, okay, well, cool, my body's responding. Now what do I do? So I created a framework that at least helps to guide someone in a very simple way so that they can cover their bases and ensure that they've built a really strong base of capacity and function in their body And at least then know, maybe I need to focus on this one or that one more specifically due to the sport I'm playing or the injury I sustained last year or so on and so forth. And so this framework is the 6 pillars of an unbreakable body. And so there are 6 areas of the body that when we build them up to have enough function, first and foremost, we need stuff functioning properly before we go about layering on strength and mobility and endurance and all these things that we want to have for fitness. If we build those up to have enough function for what you need, and then enough mobility, control, and strength for what you need for the lifestyle you want to live, you really have a strong base you're working from. And then everything you layer on top of it is much more solid. So should we go through the 6 pillars?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think it's fun to hear you talk about it because I think that's the first thing I think of is how cool, and I get to be around this every day. So the cool thing about it for me is I've started to realize how all of these things are so interconnected. And as you're explaining this, I think of, and I'm excited to talk more about this and then kind of relate it a little bit to your limited telemark experience the last couple of years, because, you know, I think about how easy it is to just focus on the things you're talking about, like endurance or strength, you know?
Yeah.
And there's been so many times where I'm like, my body actually is not functioning properly, and I haven't addressed those first. So I feel like I'm probably fairly average that way. So I'm excited for you to break this down and kind of walk us through. So, all right. Yeah. So break down the 6 pillars and explain a little bit more about that.
Okay. Yeah. And you touched on a good point there. Like, our body is always accommodating us, and that is wonderful because that means your body will continue to try to do what you're asking it to do, even if it doesn't have the stuff it needs to ideally do what you're asking it to do. It'll try to find another way. And I always say, like, you know, don't be mad if your foot is hurting, for example, because that's your body, 1, letting you know that something might need your attention, but 2, it's trying to do whatever you're asking it to do. It just may not have the tools at the ready to do what you want it to do. And so our job is to go, hey, let's go through these 6 areas of your body. And does everything work how it's built to work? Has it met its basic capacity for functioning like how it should function? Because if it hasn't, why aren't we addressing that? Because think of how much mobility and strength you would have, which you'll need to do every other kind of, long run or, big day out in the mountains or whatever. You'll need mobility and strength for both of those. Think about how much more you'll have just by unlocking the capacity that's already there. You're just not using it to its full extent. Then you layer on more mobility and strength. So people are missing so much strength and capacity they already have just because their joints aren't functioning properly in the full range that they should. And so we can get into all that too, but let's go through the 6 pillars. So it's easiest to go from the ground up just for awareness sake. So we start with strong feet. And it's really important to have strong feet, and people don't think about their feet ever. But they have as many muscles and joints as you have other places in your body. And so why aren't we doing mobility and strength work to build them up? In addition, your sense of the ground beneath you, whether you're in a ski boot or not, which ski boots were like a joke to me in the beginning because I was like, oh my God, these are so stiff and horrific. Anyways, you have ground sense underneath you with your feet. And those receptors that are in your feet tell your brain so much about how it should change muscle tension in your body, joint range of motion, where you are in space. These are really vital things for someone who wants to function well or be athletic or both. And so building your feet to be strong means making sure your toes, your ankles, and your lower legs have the range of motion they should have to function properly, and then that you strengthen them to the degree that you need for your activity. So people often think, well, I am in ski boots. Who cares? Because they're just locked down, right? Maybe a runner would need more foot strength than me. And that might be true, but you're still feeling the ground, even though the ground is now a ski boot and a ski and then the ground. You're still feeling that with your foot. And so the more you can improve the awareness that your foot has to send information to your brain and the muscles to control your foot and lower leg, even though those are in a ski boot, that really translates to having a better experience moving with your body. Plus, foot pain sucks. Like, does anyone want to be distracted by the fact that the bottoms of their feet are killing them? Like, really? I mean, that is such a fixable issue that it's startling to me that people haven't done more to work on their feet. And what they've done has been like, oh, I'll switch my orthotics, or I'll switch this, or don't wear those kinds of shoes. And there might be interventions like that that are helpful, but they're passive. They're not active. Active, signals you can send to your body are things you can do, muscles you can flex, movements you can do, actions you can take. And we think of things like changing your footwear, for example. That's helpful, and it certainly can change what you experience, but it's not the same kind of signal you're sending as when you do foot strengthening exercises, for example. Both are important. We want passive and active, but people tend to only do the passive and they rarely do the active when it comes to building strong feet. So that's the first one.
Quicker solutions.
Things that you don't have to put the work in for, right?
Yeah, no, that makes sense too. And as we're going through each of these pillars, I mean, is it something that each pillar should be paid attention to every day? Like you said, should you be putting active signals into each pillar, or how does, maybe just explain that as you're going through, just because I'm curious, like, as we're talking about feet and you're kind of relating it to ski boots and skiing and activity and stuff. Are you doing one pillar at a time? Are we doing all the pillars at the same time? How does that all work?
Well, okay, so we can diverge.
Or should I not diverge too far?
No, we can diverge
it?
into that. So, well, you need to think about if your body's always responding to the signals it receives, and it also follows the principle of it maintains what you're using most frequently, use it or lose it, right? That is true for our body. If you are not using something regularly, your body will deprioritize the upkeep of it. So it's up to you. If you would like to teach your body that you're not using your feet very much and you're not using these other parts of your body regularly, that's your call. And you're allowed to allow your body to deprioritize the quality, function, and health of that area of your body. So it's up to you if you work on them every day or not. But do you have to do like a full fitness program every day? No, this is stuff that you can incorporate into your life, which is a much better way to approach it anyways. Fitness is important, and you should do it regularly if you're going to take that on, but your life is a significantly greater span of time than a 1 hour workout is. So making your life rich with signals that help your body to feel unbreakable, I think that's a much better way to go.
I like that. Okay,
pillar two?
Pillar two.
Okay, so moving up from the feet, we've got the mobile hips pillar. And hip mobility is vital, and most of us don't have anywhere near enough of it because we live modern life and we sit and we don't use our hips as to their full extent. And we learned maybe outdated methods that are now a little more outdated, I should say, that weren't outdated maybe in the 90s or the 80s, like lots of static stretching or really only addressing the hips in more of, again, a passive sense, just sitting in a stretch position rather than actually incorporating more active inputs like strengthening for the hips. And so with mobile hips, one of the things that's important to know is that hip joint has lots of range of motion. It should be capable of accessing. And like I just said, if we don't use all that range of motion, we will deprioritize it, which means you will have to start to compensate and find other accommodations to do that, because you aren't likely to stop walking, for instance. And to walk, you need motion in your hip joint. And so if you're still walking, but your hip has lost its range of motion or some part of its range of motion, your brain and your nervous system are going, okay, well, who else could help out? And that's when we start to see things like the low back trying to extend the hip more, or some part of the sides of the hips trying to stabilize more because there isn't the muscle strength or mobility to do that in the hip joint and the hip area itself. So when we're thinking about building mobile hips, we're thinking about first restoring the hip to be like a hip so that it can actually do all the things a hip is supposed to do. And the misnomer that people often get when they are in this world as far as mobility, if they haven't really looked into that too much, is we used to think of mobility as something like you just stretch passively, or I'm not a flexible person or something like that. But truly building mobility is actually a form of strength training. We have to get our nervous system involved so that it can learn that it's safe to enter greater ranges of motion. Otherwise, your nervous system is likely to presume that if you haven't entered that range of motion regularly and you're not strong when you enter that range of motion, it will just simply disallow that. And so true mobility training, and folks will see this when they follow my stuff, and this is getting out a little more mainstream, so folks might have heard of it already, but mobility work looks a lot more like strength training these days. And actually, Josh, you've done some mobility classes with me. I have roped you into a couple of them. And the hips in particular, I distinctly recall your face as I put you through these moves that are strength moves that are unlike anything you've ever done before. And I do believe you were, I don't know, dying as we did them.
100% dying. No, and the funny thing about, like, when you bring up strong hips, this is the thing.
Mobile hips.
Or I'm sorry, mobile hips. That's what often when I do stuff with you with hips specifically, I start realizing how not, like, I don't have any mobility. I don't have any strength there. It's so fascinating to me because, you know, I've got these massive legs, like I'm a strong guy. And when it comes to these smaller movements, you know, like, in the hip thing, I never noticed. And then, like, when I'm doing jujitsu or some of this other stuff, I remember being in a jujitsu class, it was the same thing. He's like, move your hips this way. And I was like, what do you, like, it doesn't compute in the way that I think it should. And it's the same thing when you're showing me these things. I mean, I don't even, how would you describe those exercises? I mean, a lot of times there's not even a whole lot of motion going on.
No. Well, we can get really into the weeds if you want, but
I don't know about getting into the.
But for example, so your range of motion is determined by a couple of things. And to just put it really simply today, we have two main ones we often look at: passive range of motion and active range of motion. Passive range of motion would be akin to you folding over to touch your toes at the floor, or try to touch your toes. That would be a passive stretch of your hamstrings and your low back and your calves. And it's passive because you're not contracting your muscles in any way to get there. You're simply using gravity and body weight to stretch mechanically the tissues that you're stretching. Active range of motion is where you actively flex your muscle to bring yourself into a range of motion. So let's take that same toe touching stretch. If we laid you down on your back and said, okay, lift your leg as far and close to your head as you can, so kind of come up over your head, right? However far that can go would be your active range of motion, and you will likely notice a dramatic difference between the amount of passive range of motion you have and active range of motion that you have. And that's important to close that gap between those two and expand the amount of active range of motion you have, because, again, the only amount of range of motion you will access is the one your nervous system understands that you can control. So you might be stretchy till the cows come home and be super limber, but if you can't control the majority of that range, it won't be accessible to you when you're partaking in sports, daily life activities, whatever. So our objective is to teach you how to actually control more of your range of motion under your own muscular strength and power, so that your nervous system trusts you to enter it. And so that, just in brief, we could probably do a whole other show just on this, but in brief, that's the difference between passive and active range of motion, and why good mobility work actually requires you to build that active range of motion, which requires muscular contractions to do it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Okay, so should we go to pillar 3?
Yes.
Okay, so we got feet,
Yep.
hips,
Yep. And then we have strong glutes.
glutes.
And they're in the same area as the hips. And you might think, oh, it's the same thing. It's not. So here we're thinking about making sure that our glutes are strong enough to do the things we want to do in our daily life and to do the sports and activities we want to do. And strong glutes really make a difference in sports performance. We know that. In addition, I always like to think of the glutes almost as like a proxy for other things you can know about your body. For instance, if your glutes do not have strength or muscle mass to them, chances are you don't have strength and muscle mass elsewhere in your body. And having low muscle mass always makes it harder to have the capacity to move with fewer risks of injury, And muscle mass is important for health and for aging. So if you don't have a lot of glute strength, you likely also have areas of opportunity elsewhere in your health and in your function of your body. In addition, folks always think about glutes for aesthetics or for, to be a good sprinter or something like that. And those are both fair things too. But your glutes are also doing something super fundamental, which is shifting your body weight from the right to the left and back again as you walk and move through, however you're moving, any gait, whether it's walking, running, whatever, you're going to have to shift your weight. And if your glutes aren't able to shift your weight from one side to the other, you're certainly going to notice that and feel that. You just might not notice that it's your glutes that are an issue. You might notice that you have hip pain, or that your hip flexors are always tight, or that your IT bands are always tight. And so it might manifest in some other forms or fashions. It could even manifest as foot pain. That's how important it is for us to be able to offset strength from one side to the other as we're managing our body weight as we move forward. So when we're thinking about building strong glutes, those are three really big things we're thinking about. One, can you even shift your weight left to right? Two, do you have enough muscle mass to then also understand that you are managing your overall body muscle mass very well? And then also, how strong are your glutes for the performance you want to do?
Yeah. And when you talk left to right, I mean, I immediately think skiing.
Yep.
Because that's skiing. I mean, you're going one direction, then you're switching and going the other direction, and there's this constant maneuvering between, one direction to the other. So
yeah,
that's got to be a big part of it.
Yep, for sure. And so then after strong glutes, we move up a little higher to strong torso. And anyone who grew up in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s remembers like abs of steel. That's
my favorite. I do that every morning.
6-minute abs.
I do that in the Thigh Master.
Oh, nice. So. That was the old notion of abs. Then it became core work, and people did planks till the cows come home. Planks are not going to save you. You don't need to do a 5-minute plank. That's not how torso muscles work. That's not what they're meant to work for. It's not to say planks are bad, but we've used them incorrectly. But humans are pretty notorious for that. They're like, if some is good, more must be better. And that's not always true when it comes to fitness and body care. So with strong torso, really the first thing we're working on is understanding, do you breathe properly? And people listening might be like, of course I do. I'm sitting here right now. And that's true. You are. Thank God you're breathing. However, respiratory mechanics are vital for not only the strength of the torso, but for really the function of your entire body, for reasons we cannot even get into today, but we'll leave it as your breathing is going to influence your nervous system. Your nervous system is what's handling the signals and responses. So to influence the thing that's actually influencing you is really, it's so impactful. There's nothing it doesn't touch. So with strong torso, we're learning, hey, do we actually know how to use our diaphragm properly and move that muscle to the degree that it should move when we breathe? Do we know how to move our rib cage? Do we know how to not breathe with our neck? Do we know how to actually manage oxygen? And if we can do that, we already start to build a stronger torso, because the muscles of respiration are the diaphragm and the obliques and the rib cage muscles, the intercostals that are in between it. We actually start strengthening ourselves like a bodybuilding workout would strengthen you, simply by learning to breathe properly and with the right respiratory mechanics. So we start there. Then from there, we're able to say, okay, cool, things are working now. We can manage this stacked position that our torso should be in, and we can do it with the right muscles in the right positions at the right times and the right places. Then we can add in things that are, sports driven, whether it's medicine ball slams or planks or leg raises or active things like climbing or running or other things that do work your abs. You just might not notice they're working your abs because they're not like an ab workout. But once you actually start to engage your abs more for what they're made for, which is first and foremost breathing and then bracing, you will notice your abs far more in everything else that you do. And folks who say, oh, my abs are just really weak, they're there though. Your abs are there and they are capable of working, but you might just never have gotten them to the position where they can work the way they're built to. And that's, as you hear that thread in everything I teach, like, can we make sure everything works the way it's supposed to? Because you have unbelievable strength, power, mobility, potential, energy. You have all of this in you already. We just need to unlock it because you've lost it over a period of time because of accommodations you've had to make.
Mm-hmm. We've been talking a lot about breathing this last week too. I talking to you and then even looking at myself, like I've started realizing like breathing that's a big, just that alone, not even like building your torso, but just like breathing in general. Like I don't think a lot of us probably do it correctly.
No, we don't. And for a number of reasons too, because things happen, life happens, and we adapt. And that's really good that we adapt. But sometimes those adaptations outlive their usefulness. And for example, when I first learned how to improve my respiratory mechanics, my abs were sore for weeks. No lie. And I wasn't setting out to have sore abs. I don't chase soreness as a metric of success, but I was shocked at how not for breathing I was using my abs I was using my neck and using my shoulder muscles and using all these other muscles to breathe. And all these different breathing programs are out there now, which is really great. Like Wim Hof and some of these other ones you and I were just talking about. I think Hicks and Gracie's got a new one out.
Yeah. His isn't even like it's not like but there is a lot of programs and
right. And so there's like
techniques.
That's the what, but it's not the how. So hopefully those programs, I'm not sure, I haven't looked at all of them, but you want to learn that you're moving all the right things in the right directions at the right times for what you need it to do. And if you're not, then you could do any breathing program till the cows come home and you're not going to get the full benefit of it. So we start there with strong torso.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So strong. Okay. So torso, what are we on to now?
Yep. So moving up the body now, we're on to mobile shoulders, and having mobile shoulders is as important as having mobile hips, because the reality is your shoulder is incredibly versatile in what it can do, but with freedom comes responsibility, right? And, your shoulder and your hip joint are made to move the most out of any joint in your body. But we lose that because of a variety of reasons that we have accommodated over the years. And I keep saying that because there is no one reason everybody loses mobility. I could have lacking mobility in my shoulders because of old injuries, and you might have it because you just never really moved your shoulders through a lot of range of motion. Life didn't ask that of you, and so you lost it because you didn't use it. And there can be a variety of other reasons. So we just want to understand that our shoulders are made to move, and if we aren't building both the passive and the active range of motion in them, we're going to experience consequences. And nobody likes shoulder pain, because once it sets in, it tends to stick around for a really long time. So like I always say about tendonitis, it's also true for shoulder injuries. The best way to deal with a shoulder injury is never to get one, if you can help it. So that's mobile shoulders, and it's a lot of the same principles that are going on in the mobile hips category as well. And then finally, we have strong posture. And that's the last pillar of an unbreakable body, and at least from the ground up organization. People always think of good posture and bad posture, but actually there is no such thing as good posture. Good posture is the posture you're in, because we choose postures so that we can do the things we want to do, and we do it automatically. Our body stacks our stuff in a manner that suits the information, the signals that the body is getting. Posture, whichever one you're in, is just a response to those signals. And so we will find greater posture when we are capable of stacking our body in a manner that allows everything to be well organized and aligned. But think about well organized and aligned. That doesn't mean you put it there. It means your body can actually find it on its own. Your inputs can come from actively trying to build things that allow your body to respond by naturally stacking and aligning your structures so that you're able to disperse loads as best as you can. Because there's nothing wrong with having your shoulders round forward at some point, or rounding your back, or slumping in a chair. Those are just options that bodies have for movement. They only become a problem when we do them so much that we now are losing the capacity to move into other positions. And when we're in those positions and we do something that our tissues couldn't tolerate, and so they didn't maybe you bend over at the waist, for example, and you feel your back pop when you get up. Perhaps you didn't have the capacity to be in that position and picking up that thing you picked up. And so really, it's not that the posture was bad, it's just you weren't ready for that position. And so while you need to work to heal that after you get hurt, a future plan could be, hey, how do I make myself capable of being in more positions and being able to handle more loads in those positions, so that when I get in that situation, I don't even have to worry. I know my back's going to be strong enough to handle it.
Love it. I'm just over here learning. And this is what's been so cool about learning this, just being around you so much, is seeing you looking at these 6 pillars and me even just, it allows me some sort of structure to look at what's going on with my body and these signals and responses and everything like that, and kind of how to improve on it. So, okay. So quick recap, give us the 6 pillars, start to finish.
Okay. From bottom to top. This is not the order that they're my most favorite or prioritized, just bottom to top, because it's easy to remember. Strong feet, mobile hips, strong glutes, strong torso, mobile shoulders, strong posture.
Perfect. Okay. So I want to kind of bring this back now that we've kind of gone through this, because I want to bring this back around to the Telemark experience with you. Because now I've let you be the expert.
Yeah, now you get to be the expert.
And I'm sitting over here thinking about all the stuff that I don't do correctly to keep my body in shape and well done. No, but I want to obviously relate this to Telemark's scene. And you move out west, we meet, I decide to rope you into this Telemark thing. I'm like, hey, let's go do this. I give you these boots and give you a setup. Actually, we were just talking about this. The first day was not.
It was not good.
No, the first day was not good. And this is a good tidbit I want to throw in here, because people only think that we're like the NTN guys at Freeheel Life or whatever. I put you on an NTN setup the very first day, and the weather was terrible, which was part of the problem. But the first day going out, I had put you on this NTN setup, and I'm thinking, oh, this is great. I'll just start you off on like the newest, greatest thing. And you actually didn't. I don't know why you didn't like it.
I hated it.
It was just, I think it was too restrictive.
It was extraordinarily restrictive, and I didn't understand why I was in high heels the entire time. Like I was feeling like my foot was like cantilevered forward. It felt like too much, and I didn't feel like I could even manage the sensation of an NTN binding, and it didn't feel, it felt like a machine and not good in any capacity. And we weren't even trying to make tele turns that day. We were just like, let's just go out. Let's just get used to it. Get used to what it feels like to have your heels not connected and whatever. And it was from the moment I put them on, I was like, I hate this. I cannot wait to, I can't wait to sit down on the chairlift, because this is awful.
Yeah. I don't remember. Yeah. That's so, I still think back to that. And it brought up an interesting point, because I think putting you on that setup, I'm thinking, oh yeah, latest and greatest, like we'll just put you in this. What we actually ended up settling on when we started going out regularly was we put you in some T2 Eco women's Scarpa boots and G3 Targas.
And I love them.
Which is like the complete opposite. And we always joke about the Targa, but I think you're someone who really likes to have mobility and I think especially in footwear, and I think the boots already felt restrictive, so finding you a softer boot and finding you a binding that actually gave you range of motion, although it creates a necessity for more technique, I thought that was really, that ended up being helpful for you.
Very helpful. And I am like, I haven't even tried anything else since then, although we wanted to this lap, but COVID made everything crazy. So, but we wanted to have me try other stuff so I can just get a sense of like, oh, that's what a leather feels like. That's what this feels like. That's what that feels like. And so we'll do that eventually. But I instantly felt more comfortable in 75 millimeter bindings and my lovely little Eco boots. And I felt like I could feel what I was trying to do better. And while I understand I took the probably harder path, because you, as you said, you've told me countless times, you're like, well, your technique's going to matter a lot more if you're going to ski on that. But that helped me to feel things that maybe someone who's more experienced wouldn't need to feel, but having really never properly been on skis, learning things like what it feels like when your ski slides under you, what it feels like to find an edge, what it feels like to load your weight differently. Like I couldn't feel that at all in an NTN setup. I just felt like I was racing down a hill on something that almost like I couldn't feel below my knees anything. And with the setup I ski on now, it's comfortable first and foremost, even though I still have to like mess around with my boots a little bit to figure out how to make them feel the most comfortable for multiple runs, you know. I feel like I can get a sense of what I'm trying to practice, and for better or worse, there's so much to practice, and so I like that I can feel all of that as I'm doing it. And maybe it would almost be like quote unquote easier to just be like, just suck it up and do the NTN one, and that at least you can get the technique better and then send you back to that. But I kind of like that there's a lot of information I'm processing every run, probably to your annoyance at some point, because after every run I'd be like, well, this was different and that felt different and here's what I felt and here's what I noticed, and you're like, yeah, you need to do this, and I'm like, that doesn't feel right, I'm gonna do it this way.
No, and one thing we've noticed too, and I think is really interesting, is the finding someone coming from fitness and understanding like technical terminology of how the body works.
Yeah. And
then also me having let's call it Telemark Josh terminology that is like not fitness terminology. It's been interesting, like getting feedback from you and then kind of trying to figure out how to find common ground on body movements and how to help you the best to understand. And I think that gear, I'm kind of convinced, like the gear we ended up on, I think actually has helped you a lot be able to feel your body more in terms of the turn and your skis and your feet and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. Overall, I think it's been a fun breakdown, and it continues to be, where we're breaking down the stuff and trying to understand it better. So
for sure. And I continue to soak up hear the words that other people, everybody in your podcast and elsewhere, how they share about Telemark, because I'm trying to it's the funny thing. This is my job as a fitness trainer, to get you and your body to do something through seeing me do it and hearing me say certain words. And the words and movements I choose are so important, because I can instantly give you the wrong idea and give you focus on the wrong area of body, and then we don't get what we want out of the activity or exercise that we're doing. And so that is my entire world, and that has been fascinating to learn with Telemark, because I'm trying to piece together something that I don't know what it is. I'm trying to feel it the first time. I have no past history to extrapolate it from. And then I'm trying to listen to your words as you tell me things to do, or listen to Taylor or whoever. And sometimes you guys will be like, it's when this is happening, do this. And I'm like, what do you mean? I don't understand what? That doesn't make any sense. And so then we go through it and I try again, and it's a learning process for sure, but it's a pretty cool one, because I'm able to take the experience I've had coaching folks and then basically put myself on the other side and be like, okay, how do I reverse engineer this now and go, I'm the student learning. Josh is the teacher, but I need to make sure I understand him. And there's a lot of times when I don't. So why? And what does he mean? And how can I extrapolate to something I understand? And it's pretty cool. We build the bridge that way.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, so now that we've kind of talked about what you do in the Unbreakable Body program, how do you feel like, having experienced Telemark as a beginner, but you've been around it now for a couple of years, you see the different levels and whatnot. How can a program like yours, and just the concept of having these 6 pillars, is there a relationship that people can use, like in just general fitness? And I know this, the question is going to be people listening, and they're like, well, how do I get ready for Telemark season coming up? This is like, and we've been kind of throwing ideas back and forth for years, but that's why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. Is I want to hear from you how you can utilize attention to the 6 pillars and creating this unbreakable body, and how could that help somebody improve as a telemark skier.
Yeah, that's the beauty of the 6 pillars. Anyone can use them at any stage of life, at any stage of their fitness journey, whatever sport they might do. Everybody has these 6 areas of their body, and they can work on them. Even if you have, as I always say, even if you have life-altering, catastrophic something happen to you and you lose the ability to do whatever, use your legs or move your arm, you still have capacity you can build so that what you have still accessible to you is accessible to you. So with telemark skiing, for instance, I think everybody should be working on all 6 of their pillars to build that base, because if you don't have that base shored up, you're going to find out eventually. And I'm not saying that you'll never get injured if you have great 6 pillars, but we're trying to hedge our bets here. And we don't live in a risk-free world. Sometimes you get hurt. You take a wrong fall, you trip over something, you just do something wrong. It's like, whatever. But we can hedge our bets by that we'll have less of that happen if we've got a really solid base of areas of our body that function the way they're supposed to function, so we aren't having to ask some other part of your body to do too much work, and that you have the strength and mobility you need to do the activity you love. So first, I think everybody benefits from building all 6 of their pillars so that they have at least met a fundamental level of this works and is strong and is capable for what I always like to say is my daily life and my general kind of extracurriculars I like to do. From there, you can think about things in a more sports kind of sense, like you want to run a marathon or you want to be able to ski 100 days this year or something like that. And then you can start to be more specific with like, okay, I know I'm going to need a lot more lower body training for that, for both of those endeavors, 100 days plus a marathon. And I'm going to be using my body a lot more in my lower body. So I need to make sure I'm taking care of it and maintaining it so that it's not wearing down as the season goes on. And that creates an injury of some sort. So I think everyone should start with all 6 pillars, but then you need to look at the sports performance type stuff you want to do and say, okay, which of all the pillars do I really need to make sure I'm giving extra attention to? And the other ones, if some other ones are maybe less important for you in that season of life, you move that to like a maintenance mode where you're maintaining what you have, because that's annoying when you lose it, and your body will lose it if you don't maintain it. So you move it to like a light maintenance mode where it's light daily activities for that area of your body, or it's just, once a week you hit something on that part of the strength program. But that will allow you to then maintain your whole body as you push for this bigger endeavor that you're going for. And folks always think that their physical training should look exactly like the movement they do in the sport, and that is not true.
We joke around about this all the time because you think telemark season's coming up, I should do 10,000 lunges in a row. But why isn't that a good thing to do? Why shouldn't it mirror? Because obviously I could have a rudimentary viewpoint on this, but I'm curious from an expert point of view, why isn't that a good thing?
Because from what we've already talked about, we need the joint to function like a joint, and that is outside of the range of motion you use in your sport. In addition, the range of motion we use in sports always is less than the full range of motion, other than when we get into tight spots where we maybe have to flex our knee as fully as it's ever going to flex, or raise our arm to a certain degree with tons of weight over our head or something like that. So our training time is our conscious controlled environment where we build the mass of capacity that we're going to need. That doesn't mean that it's all going to look exactly like the sport that you're doing, and you're missing out if you're just doing things that mimic the movement you see in your sport. Are lunges good? Yes, not because they look like telemark.
What's funny is that a lunge, if you really think about the dynamic of a telemark turn, like you were talking about the glutes, and right to left, it's funny because even as I'm thinking about what's going on the slope, making left and right telemark turns, it's definitely not like a lunge, how you would just do a lunge in the gym.
Right.
I mean, the way you're angulating and exploding between things. I mean, there's a lot more going on.
Well, and those are all systems too. You have to remember that you've got a cardiovascular system that is also, and your muscle fibers are also managing energy. And so you need to train those in addition to training them the true muscular strength or mobility that you're going for. And so for instance, everyone's like, I'll do 1,000 lunges and, or go on these crazy workouts, oh my God. These workouts that you look at them and you're like, okay, what is this? Like there's a 2-mile run and then a a bike ride and then a bunch of burpees, then a bunch of jump squats, then a bunch of lunges, then do the run again, then do the jump squats again. Like this craziness that is like not sound in terms of strength and conditioning principles. And if the point is to suffer, that's different. But if the point is to build your body, that's not what you're going to do. And so, for example, with energy systems, you're going to have better cardio if you spend your whole summer building up your zone 2 cardiovascular fitness, which is like aerobic fitness, basically, which is very, very low level cardio strenuousness. You're going to have better fitness doing that and then bringing in some more, maybe some speed and some zone 4, some more like anaerobic work that mimics that like out of breath sensation you're going to get. And the point is that you make it so you can tolerate lots of low level activity and you have this huge base of cardiovascular fitness you can work from. And then when you dip your toe over into these big runs where you're like out of breath at the end, or halfway through your day, you're starting to get out of breath, that is pushed further out because you've got such a big base. You don't need all that much high level speed and agility and, getting your heart rate through the roof. You don't need that much of that to actually train yourself to be good at it. And it's not as useful as so much other of the fitness you need to build in your off season.
So what do you think? Okay. Yeah. And I like that. And I can attest to that because as you've shown me more of that, I feel better. I'm not like doing some routine per se, but I think it's overall fitness. And I think that's what helps me enjoy going into the Telemark season, not doing 10,000 lunges or whatever that may be. I mean, if you had to give people a couple tips, just like going, like, I know we talked about the pillars and stuff like that, but what would you, as you're going into your Telemark season, what kind of things are you going to be focusing on that are going to make an improvement? Even you specifically, just as a beginner, what are a couple things you might start incorporating, like into the summer, heading into the fall?
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to, as the weather starts to turn, come back to more heavy lifting. Because of the positive impacts that has not just on muscle mass, but also on the energy management systems that I need for when I need to do something explosive in the wintertime. So heavy traditional strength training, deadlifts and lunges and squats and, bench press and pull-ups and all that kind of stuff, because of the overall benefits that offers for my body. In addition, I'm going to keep up my zone 2 cardio that I like so much. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's any sort of cardio you can do with your mouth closed. No breathing through your mouth. You breathe only through your nose and you breathe comfortably through your nose. And those who go out and try that will likely find that they can't go very fast initially because they are not trained. That's also a really good fat burning zone. And so in order for like maintaining kind of that lightness on your feet, it's really great for that. It can help folks who maybe want to address body composition before they get into their season so that they're a bit lighter when they're out on the slopes. But I'm going to maintain that as far as I can into the winter until the weather gets too gnarly to be outside running. But then on top of that, I know I want to bring back some more of my hip mobility work because things go in seasons, right? People always think that health and fitness people are always doing all the things, and that's not true at all. Like right now I'm swimming and loving it and climbing and going outside and really just being active generally without a specific focus in the gym per se. And so that's appropriate too, because then your body gets a chance to adapt through a number of different types of signals that you're sending to it. And it's not going to be getting the same thing over the course of a year that it then adapts to where it's no longer influential signal to your body. And so bringing back more hip mobility training, like I was talking about earlier, the stuff that makes you cramp up and have all sorts of pains in your hips. Because I do know that what I remember from seasons past with Telemark is that where I did feel fatigue after a while was in the management of my hips, and I can offset that by making myself more capable so that it takes longer to get to that point where I'm like, oh, okay, now I'm starting to feel fatigue in my hips and it's starting to make it harder to do the correct technique and things like that. So that's what I'm going to be working on this season. But generally speaking, I think folks should at least start to think about their 6 pillars and think about where the maybe glaring or not so glaring holes might be in their pillars and do something about that before the season. starts. If they're already in their season, it's not too late to start then too. But start to consider that in the sense of everything else they're doing. And if nothing else, use what you're already doing or what you're going to start doing for the season. Look at it through a lens of the 6 pillars and ask yourself, am I covering all my bases here? Am I actually shoring up my foundation, or am I missing something that might come back to bite me in the butt later on?
I love that. So tell people where, I think these are all really good things. They're going to help people kind of start thinking about this. And I think this is a really common question that doesn't come up, is like just overall fitness with Telemark. So I think this is awesome. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Of course.
It's really fun doing it with you. Tell people where they can find out more about the 6 pillars. And then you have written a lot of content about fitness in general. Mm-hmm. So yeah, where can people find more about your stuff?
Sure. So I have 2 websites folks can find me at. If you want to learn just the how-to about fitness, go over to the unbreakablebody.com and you can read articles about the 6 pillars, watch me talk about it. You can look through all the different offerings I have there. You can look at all the cool information I've put together to help someone really become this unbreakable human, which I guess we should wrap up with what an unbreakable human is too. I forgot about that. But if you care about learning about the fitness part of it, go over to the unbreakablebody.com. If you'd like to learn more about me and how I use my unbreakable body in my life, head over to fitforreallife.com. It's where I write a lot about living as an unbreakable human and how you can use your body to do that, and the non-physical stuff that goes into being fit. Much as we might like to think that these bodies are just machines that we can, input signals and get responses out. That is true. And your mind and your spirit and your energy systems and your sleep, and there's all these other things that are also signals to your body, and that you can tinker with and work on to make yourself the most unbreakable human that you can be. So with that, I actually want to
tell me. Yeah.
I want to ask you yours too. So I like to ask folks, if you picture becoming unbreakable, what is that vision for you? So I'll tell you mine first, and then I'll let you think while I'm talking. Okay. So for me, being unbreakable is feeling capable, that I can do anything the day asks of me. And that's the little things to the big things. It means feeling confident, both in myself and in my ability to navigate whatever craziness is going to come my way, not just physical, like the stressors of life too, because a physical training practice teaches you a lot about how to manage life as well and to carry yourself through life. So to me, being unbreakable means feeling confident. It also means feeling free, so that I can go have as many experiences as I want, and that my body is never holding me back ever. I never have to say, I would love to, but I can't because my back's bothering me. I never want to have to say that. And so it includes feeling free. Feeling unbreakable also to me means feeling strong, and both physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually. It also means feeling like there is a world out there that I can expand out into for the rest of my life. That getting older never means that I do less. It never means that there's less I'm capable of. And it never means that it's like a ball and chain that is going to keep me from something. So I always can go out into the world, and that I can have a positive outlook that the world truly is my oyster. Even if I'm like 95 someday, I'm still going to be that person who's like, here's what I want to do, and I'm doing it. I'm going to be the old granny out there, So those are just a few things. I have quite a bit more that I think goes into being unbreakable, but those are a few of the kind of top line items for me. What does it mean to you to be unbreakable?
No, I like that. And that's a really good question, because I think, part of why it's fun having you on the podcast is because obviously we're around each other all the time. And I've seen these principles in action and seen it kind of become more, and this, I think this is what Unbreakable is to me, is I've started understanding that it is that confidence. It's like the day-to-day, I'm doing things more regularly, like better sleep, for instance, or learning how to recover. And for me, that unbreakability is sort of, when it's go time, I'm just ready. It's almost all the preparation, I think, that and basic maintenance, where I'm not just like, okay, I have to do this right now. I have to work out, or I have to do everything. It seems like this type of mindset, being unbreakable, is like it's more the preparation, so that when the game time comes, or however you want to look at that, I feel confident to do it, and I'm not worried about getting hurt or not being able to perform or something like that. So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that's great. It really is a way of living, not a destination you're heading to. There might be destinations along the way, but being unbreakable never ends until the day you die.
No, and I'm wearing my shirt right now.
Mm-hmm.
Too old is a myth.
Yep, that's my shirt.
That's the but I love that saying, because especially as we're getting older, I think that you hear that more. It's like, you're old, or there's just there is a lot of myth around this idea that as you get older, that you're not supposed to be able to do certain things. Mm-hmm. And I think that's
bullshit.
Totally. It is bullshit. It's a very weird thing that people shouldn't buy into. So
no, not at all. And it's I've been hearing that for 20 years now. And what I heard for 20 years was, you just wait till you're 40. Well, I'm there, folks.
I know you made it.
And I feel great. But we'll get into all that another time. But the notion that you're too old for something is an outright lie. So ban that from your vocabulary now.
Yep. And I think that's a perfect place for us to end. And I think, thanks for coming on and explaining, the unbreakable body. And also, I think just kind of getting the wheels turning for people in the telemark world. And thank you for explaining a little bit about your experience getting into the sport and learning about it. So
it was a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And we'll have you back on to talk about some more stuff in the future. So
fantastic. I want to help people with fitness.
All right. I want you to too. All right. Oh, that was such a fun conversation to have. We've been talking about doing that particular podcast and that conversation for a really long time. Obviously, because we're always around each other and we're always talking about, fitness, how that relates to telemark. Obviously, the world that she comes from and the world that I come from, and we're always trying to figure out, okay, this is interesting. Where can we kind of cross things over, learn from each other and whatnot. So I'm so glad she took the time to sit down and talk. And I'm sure Kate will be on again, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But hopefully that kind of sparked your interest about fitness leading into the upcoming season and just how to take care of your body. Honestly, I think maybe that was less of a, fitness in the sense of like, hey, here's a workout you got to go do, but more just, mind, body, attention, how to pay attention to your body, how to make sure you're truly fit and ready for what you're doing. And, that's just a daily improvement thing. And I can't express enough, honestly, the things Kate's taught me on a personal level, how it's helped me live my life better, especially as, I'm getting a little bit older. And you got to take care of that body a little bit better. So I'm incredibly grateful for that. And she's a well of knowledge and an awesome person to follow. If you don't follow her online and you haven't checked out her programs, please do. Go check them out. And like I said, we'll have her back on again in the future to help us out in our telemark fitness endeavors. And so hopping out of this, real quick, I want to make sure to keep you all in the loop with what we're doing. This is especially the best time for you to get on our mailing list. We want to make sure that we have contact with you, that we have the ability to send you all the updated content. We know sometimes you're not digging around on social media and you're actually living your life, and that's a great thing. We want to make sure that our emails are clear and concise and helping you find what you need, whether it's information from Freeheel Life, from the shop, new gear, equipment that's in, events that are coming up, or content from Telemark Skier, or videos that we're putting out. So be sure, go to the link in the notes, sign up for the mailing list, become part of the family. and staying in touch with us. As far as getting ready for the season, we're going to be starting to get stuff in the shop sooner than later. So please, we would love, this is when I start kind of throwing it out there, that we want to be your preferred Telemark ski shop in the entire world. We ship worldwide. We would love for you to shop with us. Freeheellife.com. We have a brick and mortar store that's open from October through April in Salt Lake City. And we want to make sure that we can earn your trust and earn your business and keep it over many, many years to come. So freeheellife.com, check it out, follow us online. And like I said, the mailing list is a good way to do that if you're not on the social media train. As I said in the beginning of the podcast, telemarkskier.com, that's where you're going to find articles, gear reviews, and more. It's part of the Freeheel Life family, and we are putting out content every week. There's some free stuff, and there is a lot of premium content that requires you to have a subscription. We encourage you, become part of the family. Just like we want to earn your trust and your business at the Freeheel Life shop, we want to do that as well on the editorial side. That's why I've hired Craig Dostie, who is the man who ran Coular Magazine, started Telemark Skier Magazine. He is the guru himself of Telemark gear and an essential part of our program over there. And we're really, really excited for him to be doing all the content on telemarkskier.com, along with a few other pieces from people like myself and some of the other shop crew. So please consider subscribing to telemarkskier.com for all that good stuff. If you want to get in touch with me, you can always email me at podcast@freeheellife.com. Catch the shop crew at customer service at freeheellife.com. And thank you so much for listening. I had a great time talking this week, and I will be back next Monday with another Freeheel Life podcast, and can't wait to talk to you again. But until next time, my friends, you know how it goes. Spread Telemark always. And I'll see you on the flip side. Cheers.